Good afternoon, everyone. Very welcome. A very warm welcome on this frosty Brussels afternoon. It's good to have you all here, and it's good to see so many familiar faces and also new faces, of course. That's very nice. Some of you, I hear, have been in the Experience Center. Some of you have delegated colleagues to come to the Experience Center. I've only made it here today, which is great because this is very much about show and don't tell. That was the intention with this Experience Center, to set this up. The new word for this apparently is pop-up store. So we wanted to do this here at the heart, in the heart of the European Quarter, to show what the auto industry is about. And I was here on this stage earlier this week, and I will say the same thing that I said on Tuesday. That is, we often talk in Brussels, but also in ASEA and in the industry, about cars. We sometimes talk about trucks. We probably do not talk often enough about buses. This afternoon is about the first-hand experience. So the Experience Center, show, don't tell. And for most of us, it's probably true when it comes to heavy-duty vehicles. I mean, I know some of you here who has already driven a truck. That's very encouraging because it destroys my line of argument here. No, but usually the case is that, and we all know this, trucks are oftentimes ignored. Most often they're ignored, or they're considered in real life a nuisance, right? But it is also true, we all know this, that they're actually quite essential to our economic prosperity and to our daily lives. And there's also no question that they're a considerable part of the climate change problem. But, and that's the good news, they can also be part of the solution here. And this is where this afternoon the good news starts. Real-world reports of driving electric cars have been around for a while already. But driving electric heavy-duty vehicles, long haul, 40 tons, that's something new, right? Who's done this already? Long haul. And this is the reason why we, for this afternoon, invited a couple of people who actually did it, actually know what it's like to drive an electric, fully loaded, battery electric heavy-duty truck long haul across Europe. And that's why we wanted to have them here to show and not only tell what it's like to do this in real world. So for this reason, please welcome Amanda Gerdvall, Scania, and Kristine Stålhandske. Welcome. And the two will give a presentation about the Scania experience. And then we will have a follow-up session by Jochen Gottstein from Daimler Truck. And after that, we will have a little podium panel discussion. So you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me well? Great. All right, so thank you for having us. My name is Kristine Stålhandske, and with me I have
Amanda Gerdvall. Both of us works at Scania with Electrification. And late this summer, beginning of the autumn, we did a trip from Södertälje in Sweden to Istanbul with one of our electric trucks. So what we will go through today is like why we did it, how we did it, and a bit of our experiences. And just short, why we did this. It was a 30 years celebration between Scania, Volkswagen, and the private dealer Dorsch in Turkey. And they wanted to visualize what they have been doing this 30 years of collaboration, and also planning ahead what will come in the coming 30 years. And then electrification is very like a focus topic for them. We basically wanted to understand what our customers are facing today, turning electric, and also to help us during this journey, we had a passenger car ID7 with us to scout a bit of the charging stations and plan a bit in advance, and also do a lot of documentation of the reality out there.
Exactly. So we are 2/5 of the women driving down to Istanbul. So the vehicle we drove, it's a serial production vehicle. It's 624 kilowatt hours installed, 75% stock window, so 468 kilowatt hours available. The gross ton weight was 38 tons, and we had a truck and a semi-trailer, and the charging capacity is 375 kilowatts on this. And we tried to optimize the energy consumption by having A-class tires on the truck, but we did have C-class tires on the trailer, so a little bit more rolling resistance there.
So this is the plan that we had before going. We started 21st of August and planned to reach Istanbul 4th of September. And as you can see in the stars, we had some customer meetings and different visits at our Scania local distributors out in the markets. So yeah, was our original plan. But due to a lot of troubles with the charging, we ended up squeezing in a lot of more different cities and also an additional country to pass different driving bans during the weekends to catch up with the schedule.
Yes, but yes, it did not go exactly to plan originally. We did arrive on time because we didn't drive this commercially per se. We took the advantage to actually meet with customers and journalists and etc. So it was really great. But we had a really positive impressions from the markets and the countries where we passed through. In Eastern Europe, mostly we were quite alone with a heavy-duty truck, an electric heavy-duty truck driving on the road. So we had a big interest from drivers coming in wanting to video call their friends and show the cab and the cabin, and a great interest of, can I go in? Is it different? Is it etc. So it was really, really nice experience there. And we did have a lot more charging points than what we expected when we started planning out this. Because when we started planning, it looked very empty on the map with charging possibilities in specifically, going east from Europe, basically, or east from Poland, sorry. Bulgaria, Romania was not that many charging points available, it looked like. But there were. When we arrived, there were a lot more. It just, in our tools originally, we didn't see that. And when it came to the truck itself, it was great. We didn't have any issues with the vehicle at all, actually, and we had an average energy consumption of 1.15 kilowatt hours per kilometer. So benefits then of driving long haul with a electric vehicle or electric truck: the silence. I mean, no vibrations and very silent makes you not as tired after long driving. We had very seamless gear shifting. That also helps us in the uphill. We didn't lose any power, so when it was allowed, we could pass other diesel vehicles. It's not allowed everywhere, of course, so we didn't do that, but it's possible. And one advantage that we did not really foresee before we went on the trip, was that it's a great vehicle to stand in queue with, actually, because we experienced the border crossing between Romania and Bulgaria. We stood 18 hours in line for that. And the difference from our experience versus our colleagues with diesel vehicles is that we could have the vehicle on, we could have the AC on, we could have the refrigerator, all the helping systems, the light, the radio, etc. And during 18 hours and driving 12 kilometers, we lost 7% of the consumption of the battery. So it wasn't very much, actually. And we also didn't, of course, have the risk of the discharge at 24-volt battery system. Yeah, and as you see we had some fun on the road as well, actually.
And if we look a little bit then on our charging experience, first of all, we experience a lot of different applications and payment methods. And so every time we come to a new charging station, we had to download a new app, register an account, add our bank cards, and also for some add in money in the specific application that we couldn't get out later on. So yeah, we have a bit of money stuck in different apps right now. And then also we found out that there are a lot of different versions of how you pay. At some charging stations, we found out that we have to pay by minute. And if you pay by minute, you really want the power that the charger promised you to get, which was not really the case. In many of the cases, we had like 150 charger, and after like 5 minutes, when I guess the CPOs wanted us to go to McDonald's or something, overheated a lot, then it dropped to 100 kilowatts. So then it took a way much longer to charge the truck than we had planned for in advance. And that's also one of the reasons why we got delayed then in the schedule. But the majority of the charging sessions was paid by kilowatt hour, so what you actually charged for. And if we also look a little bit on the range of price, we paid for public charging then everything between 0.35 to 0.77 euros per kilowatt hour. So quite a spread range there of how to pay. But also something that we really realized in the beginning when planning this trip is that we don't really have a platform right now where you can search for all the information that you need when planning the charging sessions. So for example, we used Charge Finder, we used Google Maps, just to get an overview of where are the chargers out there. And also then we missed a bit the information as well, because at one charging stop, we came there, we tried for 1 hour to charge before we realized, oh, this charger doesn't even have the right voltage range that we need for our truck. And that was something that we never could see in the apps when planning the trip. But also, as said before, there are way much more chargers out there and a lot under construction, especially than we saw in Romania, where they're also building out their highway network. So then they also take into consideration the heavy truck transportation. And if we look at the hardware of charging, in average we had a power of 140 on the hardware out there, so quite good power anyway. And maybe what we saw like as the biggest challenge for us during the trip is that we charged 21 sessions, and 14 of these ones we had to decouple the trailer, which took us a lot of time. For some of the sessions, we had to decouple the trailer like a couple of kilometers away from the charger, then travel back to the charger, start to charge, travel back to the parking lot to pick up the trailer, and then continue our road again. So, I mean, for some cases, we lost like 30 minutes to an hour just with the logistics around the charging session. Which is not really a good thing when you're doing this commercially, because you have your time windows to delivery and also the safety of the goods. Who will actually keep track of no one damaging what you have inside the trailer?
Yeah, and this is an example of a charger that we used in Bulgaria, where it is at the McDonald's parking, and of course it's great that we managed to charge, but there were solar panels as a roof there. They were not connected, unfortunately, but they were there, and so we had to, we actually had to block this a little bit with our personal vehicle or passenger vehicle first to make sure that the truck, when it arrived, could go in there. And as you see, we could not have we have to decouple the trailer at this point as well. So this was the majority of the charging sessions we had to decouple actually. And when you just showing the left graph here is showing the range of public charging fees or what we paid per kilowatt hour in the different countries, and then not all countries are here because not all countries we actually used public charging. Some places we did overnight charging at the Scania workshop, and that's not included in this. And the right graph is showing the price per liter for diesel in the same countries. And we have actually quite a lot of feedback from customers saying right now when they do the calculations with what the prices of the diesel versus the prices of the electricity, to make this business case add up, they can't have a price of higher than 0.2 euro per kilowatt hours. It's the feedback we get, but it's we paid quite a big range of difference in here.
Yeah, and if we look at how many apps we actually use during these trips, this is all of them. So yeah, we have to download them, register an account, and start the process every time we came to a new CPO, more or less. And actually, fun thing was at one charging station, we downloaded the app, we registered an account, we started to charge, and then the charger completely took out our phones. Our network completely died when we had the application downloaded on our phones until we deleted the app and also deleted all the data connected to it. And that we did twice. And then we realized it's actually the app that are crashing our phones completely while doing the charging sessions. Also to mention is that we did a similar trip during the spring to Italy. So we have just done a short comparison between Western and Eastern Europe. And what we saw in Western Europe, it's a lot of truck bans going into the gas station. So it's quite hard to actually enter a charging station with a truck if it's not a truck-specific one. While we saw in the Eastern Europe, it's more bans on specific roads. So you can enter more or less everywhere if you can drive on the road. So that was more or less the issue there. And also what we saw in Western Europe is that, at least in our experience, is that it was more reliable charging speed and power, and also a bit higher power, we would say. I think there we almost had around 150, 200s on all the chargers, and we had slightly less than in Eastern Europe. And as mentioned before, there are a lot of heavy truck charging stations under construction out there, which we are very happy to see. And also we found out in Western Europe that we could actually keep the trailer way much more than we could in Eastern Europe. It was the logistic flow to get into the gas station, and the charger was a little bit better planned there.
Yeah, and as a final slide, we have just a few statistics and facts and figures of the trip. So the total distance we drove was 4,439 kilometers. The engine running time, including standing in queue then over borders, was 106 hours. And then the total time spent charging was 58 hours, but that's including a few sessions overnight. So 24 of these hours were public charging. And the average energy consumption then was 1.15 kilowatt hours per kilometer. We charged 4,994 kilowatt hours during this trip, and if you calculate that, it was what's shown in the ICL versus what's actually charged was quite close. So that's something positive for us. And the average temperature outside was at least 30 degrees. So it was during summer, and also shows that the truck is there. I mean, the battery is working in this temperature, and the conditions for the driver in the cab is fine as well. So and then time over borders, 18 hours at one and 15 hours at another. So we tried it out at the border, passing quite a lot. But yeah, that's all from us. Yeah, thank you.
So much. Very interesting. Before any questions or so, let's have Jochen first for a similar experience, I think, for Daimler Truck. Jochen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I think some things will be the same. The experience is quite similar. My name is Jochen Gottstein. I come from the entire vehicle testing in Woerth, in the test center. And this summer we had the eActros 600 European Testing Tour 2024. And I would like to share some insights with you. I drove the first stint from Woerth to close to North Cape. So I have some first-hand experiences there, and members of my team drove the rest and with one of the trucks as well. So let's look into that. Some figures were 2 trucks. We crossed 22 countries. We had 40 tons of combined vehicle weight, and it was more than 15,000 kilometers that we drove. We drove from Woerth to the North Cape, the northern point of Europe, to Tarifa, the southern point, and then back to Woerth. And before I go into some facts and figures, I would like to give you some impressions with a video that was made from the trip.
Mercedes-Benz. Trucks you can trust.
So this was the basically a video we also showed at the IAA to prove a little bit to our customers that the trucks are there and that it's possible today to do electric trucking, but obviously it's not quite suitable for commercial trucking, as you put it. We totally agree on that. We see three factors for a successful transformation to electric trucks. One is a product, and I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. We also have a product available for long-haul trucking. Products with sufficient range and fast charging capability are the key there. The second part is infrastructure, and I'd like to also show you some pictures and experiences we had. I think if we want to do commercial trucking, we need truck-dedicated power chargers so that we don't have to uncouple or wait. We need secure overnight parking. I'm diving into that as well, because compared to passenger car drivers, truck drivers tend to sleep also close to the charging station. Also, things like restrooms and showers. I also slept in a truck. And if you sleep in a truck and the next morning you'd like to take a shower or hit the restroom, and a lot of the passenger car charging stations, that's not possible. So that's one part. And the third part that is not a big point of the presentation today is the cost parity. Obviously, the transportation business is a business that has not a lot of margin. It's not a really profit margin business, so it needs to be profitable for our customers. Otherwise, it won't be a success. Talking about the product a little bit, the Electra 600, it's basically the first serial truck deliveries will start end of this year. These were late prototypes that we used during the trip. We have 22 tons of payload that we can haul with a 4x2 tractor. We have 500 kilometers of range. In our case, we have LFP batteries that have a higher ratio of, they have a higher depth of discharge. We have our truck is designed in the same way. That was a big challenge, like a diesel truck. That means how do we design it is for a long haul truck, 1.2 million kilometers and 10 years of lifetime, and it's the same with this truck with one set of batteries. So that was also something that was very important for us to have the same design boundaries. It's available as rigid as tractor. You can also get PTOs on it. We have also powerful axles, two electric engines with 400 kilowatts continuous power, 600 peak. And the charging part, it comes standard with a CCS charging system. That means we can charge up to 400 kilowatts charging power standard. That means from 20 to 80% of SOC, you can do that in 60 minutes. But also you can have a preparation for the megawatt charging standard as a second plug inlet. So obviously the standard is still under development, so there will be a little bit of retrofitting, but you can get the preparation already, because then we can drop down to 30 minutes, 20 to 80. And as you know, truck drivers have mandatory break times. So with half an hour, you get into the 45 hours mandatory break time. And that is a game changer also if you really want to do 700, 800 kilometers in one trip. Now about the charging stations. I took a lot of pictures there because we have even more. But just to give you a little bit of an impression, these are the good passenger car charging stations. These are the ones where you don't have to uncouple. We also saw about, I think, 80% of the time we had to uncouple the trailers. We see a north to south difference as well here. The Scandinavian countries are great as far as these chargers go. When you come south, it's not as great. And also the blocking is a big point in the western parts. So you can see it. That's sometimes you have an empty part and you block a lot of charging stations, but if there's nobody there, it's not a problem. Also, sometimes you have the height available, as you can see here. Here in Biri, it was a petrol gas station that also has high power chargers in Biri. That was quite amazing to see that, because you drive in there like a regular station, you even dry when it rains. So that's also something nice. Here you see power stations that were just just being opened, but it was pouring rain. We got soaking wet when we changed trucks there. So these are the good ones. Now we get to the uncoupling parts. So this is the situation that you encounter. You unhook the trailer first, and the same experiences here. We also sometimes, this was a good one, we could park it here on a good parking space, but also safety is one part, but also that passenger cars do not block you. Because we also had a vehicle, a passenger car for press and media that came and went. And sometimes we used also that vehicle to not only reserve a charging spot, but also to park in front of the trailer. Because if a passenger car driver who doesn't know how to uncouple or decouple a tractor trailer combination, he will park his car there. And then you come back, and then you can't pick up your trailer anymore. So these were kind of things that for us as engineers doing a trip, that's okay, but not for a commercial truck driver. That's not possible. And also here, I mean, I'm sure that the manufacturers of charging stations didn't want us to park as close to these as we did it, because that's the only way to get the cable in there. We parked that crooked because that's the only way to reach the charging point, the charging outlet. And this one was a special one. This was, I think, after 2 charging stations didn't work at all. The last one worked with 90 kilowatt, and that was then already evening, and that's also a long day. We tried on our trip because we had these experiences before. We made a very conservative planning in order to meet it. So we calculated with, for the majority, 1 charge in the evening so that we can play with it, and that also maybe 1 person stays with the truck if something goes wrong, and the other ones can catch some sleep with the 2 drivers per truck. So we then were able to somehow manage that, because you also have mandatory break times and sleeping times. So it's not unlimited. If you have charging issues, you might get into troubles the next days. So these were kind of the impressions that you can see, and also how close we were to passenger cars. That was the majority of situations that we encountered over our trip. Sometimes we're also competing with passenger car drivers. Here it was late in the evening, close to Hamburg. But as you can see, how many we didn't want to unhook the trailer, but we blocked basically all of the stations. It was an evening; there was nobody there. It wasn't a problem. And later on, we went back out, and after we charged the trucks and reparked them. But that's something that you couldn't do over the day. We also with the Teslas, and we also had these discussions with them. A lot of times they're very interested. But sometimes they just wanted to get home, and we were a pain for them, because some of the charging stations, they split the power. So now you come with this truck, you hook it up, and it just pulls. And then this passenger car, they reach, when you charge a passenger car on a 300 kilowatt charger, it might reach that peak for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but not for an hour. And we also found that some of the charging posts, they went pretty well for like 50 minutes, and then they started venting, and the power dropped down, and then you got maybe 200 kilowatt out of it. Sometimes we had the feeling that they didn't use cool cables. So it was always these experiences that you rarely get the 300 kilowatts out of that. But also, we found very positive examples. This one was in Copenhagen, a brand new Eon station, 400 kilowatt, and I took a little screenshot, 401.7 kilowatt. That was a big highlight. This stayed constant, and this is fun. You drive in there, you don't have to uncouple the trailer, you have charging power, and off you go again. But it's that not within the mandatory break time. It's CCS at this point in time. But if those are available in the future, that will get better there. There's a mileage station in Venlo, and mileage, as you know, the joint venture between Traton, Volvo, and Daimler Truck. There you see these charging stations that are truck dedicated, and as you've seen in the earlier slide, they also market the truck specific things like restaurants, food availability, showers, restrooms, and this has to be the future to have something like that, but it cannot be just a joint venture of truck OEMs. This needs to be something on a bigger scale. Aral Puls, for example, that's also a good approach. They also have these stations starting already, and that's something that has to come, in our opinion, for commercial truck driving, because then it can be integrated into the strict timetable of our customers. And on the right hand, that was Gerdvall. They are also a big station, but we didn't get a 400 kilowatt out of them. So that's kind of an overview of our experiences on the 15,000 kilometers that we drove, and focusing a little bit about the charging experiences here that might be of interest. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Very interesting indeed. And now is the moment indeed where we should. I would keep this. I would like to keep this very light. So if you have any questions, then now's the moment, and then we'll lead this over into a panel discussion here. And for that, I would like to ask Axel Volkery, DG Move, up on the stage. Please have a seat. I would also like Emilia Käck of Scania to come up, please, and have a seat. And Jochen, you're back on stage. Please. So, thank you so much for these presentations, Amanda and Kristine and Jochen. Any questions anyone would like to ask here? Oh, that's an unusual thing. Fuensanta, please.
Fuensanta Martinez from ASEA. Out of curiosity, did you have the same issue as the Scania ladies regarding the information on the charging stations?
Yes, there was the same here. It's very difficult to get some information. Some parts of the route we had some experience from earlier tests where somebody drove by and said there's a good station or here's a good station, but it was too thin. So most of the times we did some research and we said this is number one priority, this is the fallback, and in the end the only one that stays is McDonald's. It's reality. You uncouple your trailer. Typically they have high power chargers and you get something to eat. And you have a restroom. But that's usually it's kind of urban area, so we try another place first, normally.
Very good, excellent. There was one gentleman here, and then...
Yes, Ivo Kree from Polis. The bad design of these locations, where does it come from? Is it not expecting you as a customer, or is it...
It's not intended to be a bad design. It was designed for passenger cars. And as Scania pointed out already, it was designed for a parked passenger car where the people would go someplace, maybe need something, and they want to prevent trucks from driving there because a lot of times trucks don't find a place to park at night, diesel trucks, and they park all over the place and they want to ban them out. So that's why they design the way that trucks cannot drive there. So that part is intended because they never thought about electric trucks coming, I guess, because it's always very difficult to get there.
No, but I could also comment. I mean, we're getting back to that trucks is not just big passenger cars, right? So I think that's so we really need to have dedicated charging points for the trucks. I think that's one of the key learnings from these trips. So that's something to bring with us, and not the least with the charging capacity as well. I think we looked into the numbers there as well for the Scania trip, that if we would have been able to charge at a faster speed, then the charging time would have been at least half for the public charging. Even more if we would have, I think it's 25% if we were talking megawatt charging. So it's super important to understand that we need to have charging infrastructure that is fit for heavy-duty vehicles.
Excellent, thank you. There was at least another question here, please.
Yeah. Yes, Frank Hütten from German Transport Journal. if I haven't missed it, you have said nothing about having to wait for accessing charging stations. Was that never a problem, or did you have to wait sometimes? Did you come at times where a usual commercial truck would have come too, so that you have a comparison if that would have been a problem or not? Thanks.
Basically, what we encountered was that there weren't that many commercial trucks driving around yet. Only in Göteborg, I think, and in Copenhagen, at truck dedicated charging stations, we encountered other electric trucks. Most of the times it was passenger cars, and where there were more populated areas, we sometimes used the vehicle that we had to shuttle press and media back and forth to us, the truck and back. We used that vehicle as a kind of a scout and say this one is available or not. And if it's completely blocked, full with passenger cars, we didn't drive there. We took another one. So that was how we helped ourselves. Because for a truck driver, it wouldn't be an option to drive there and then find out that he has to wait. And most of the time, we blocked more than one spot because we had to park at some sort of weird angle. And then, even though they're interested, the passenger car drivers, they get frustrated. So we also wanted to avoid to have a conflict situation there. So then we would reschedule. As we said, we planned with a safety buffer. We planned with one charge at a day, but normally we would have had the ambition to drive more, to recharge and continue, but we didn't dare to do that because of infrastructure.
Excellent. Further questions? Perhaps that is the moment. This is the moment, Axel. So you told me earlier you were following this the Scania trip online, but you haven't heard the presentation here, and you probably also have not heard from the Daimler story. What's your take?
First of all,
what's your impression?
First of all, I need to congratulate you, and as someone who has been in this discussion for quite a long period of time, I remember quite widely discussions in this very town, and they are not that long ago, where people said, driving a 38 or a 40-ton truck, fully track across Europe, you live in Wolkenkuckucksheim, as we say in Germany. And actually you did it. I mean, you have these trucks on the road, amazing, really, really very amazing engineering work. Really congratulations. Also the use figures you're showing on the consumption, I mean, that's really great. And now, of course, as you say, we need to create the conditions to make it happen in terms of the infrastructure, to make it user-friendly, to make it transparent. You know, we have AFIR for that with a minimum. Of course, we need to have more, but particularly on the data and information, I think with the implementation of AFIR, and we're concluding now also on the delegated act, so that all the data become available, that will hopefully soon settle itself. On the recharging infrastructure, I think we also need to, and we discussed it before, you have the long distance trucking on the highways, but I mean the bulk of the trucking will be in between different depots and their destinations, and so we have different recharging challenges there. Not only the big ones on the highways, but particularly the depots and the destinations. But I think also with the market is kicking in, we are evaluating the first cutoff under the new call for the alternative use infrastructure facility, and while we are still evaluating it, I can tell you we have seen and we have received quite a number of good projects on HDV recharging. And also the numbers we see there, the anticipated prices for the recharging experiences, which are very competitive. I mean, we are still very early on, absolutely, but I see that the dynamics are really great.
So, but what do you think? How fast is this going to? Everyone in the room knows the numbers. We need roughly 400,000 or so heavy-duty vehicles, zero emission in operation by the end of the decade, and 100,000, a third of new registrations from 2030. What's your? Is this going to happen? How fast is this going to happen?
Well, I think you can quote me even on that. I guess I think the transition in this sector might even go quicker than in the light-duty vehicle sector, because people simply calculate the use case. And if your three columns that you have, the vehicle, the infrastructure, and the other elements of the total cost of ownership come together, then it's a no-brainer. So we have to see how we get our hands on the infrastructure challenge. We need to get our hands on the grid challenge. We need to get our hands on the planning challenge. But if there is a strong business interest behind it, then of course that's a bit that's a good driver to help us do this. So it will not be a easy walk. Huh? Well, of course not. It will be a very challenging walk, but I don't think it will be insurmountable. And I think all the ingredients are there. Just have to implement it.
Mm-hmm. Emilia, any response? Any view?
Well, I guess it's much more. What we've seen is that it's much more complicated than we would have thought in the beginning. I mean, if you look on all the enabling conditions that we will need, and also, I mean, these 2 trips or 3 that has been done. I mean, it's amazing things. But I mean, that's not what our customers can do. I mean, they cannot decouple a trailer. That will be completely impossible. And I think we also for the early adopters here, we probably need to see better than TCO parity. Because they are kind of losing flexibility here as well. They are taking a risk because they are early adopters. So we will probably need to have a business case that is better than a comparable diesel truck. So I think that I think we all are aiming for and hoping for that this will be reached, but it is still a challenge, I would say.
What do you think? How far are we away from this? And I mean, it's there's no such thing as the truck, right? You did a certain vehicle configuration, a certain route, but how far are we away from typical use cases and cost parity, or even better than cost parity?
I mean there are use cases already today where we have a good business case for our clients. But I think it can be for certain distances. You need to secure that you have because you want to have a range that is handleable without too much charging, but still that it's long range, because then the price difference between diesel and electricity is then beneficial. So I mean there are examples, of course, and we can see and you can see with off-peak solutions where you can have a better productivity by delivering night times or during weekends. Then of course you can get a better business case as well. But I mean I wouldn't say we really need to find and calculate these topics, and it's also about the transport buyers themselves as well. They also need to kind of to be flexible, maybe to have longer contracts and those type of aspects as well. So I think it's several parts, and I think that we have been talking about public charging here, and I think you mentioned also depot charging, which we totally agree with as well. But there we also see the challenge with grid. Even for depot charging with lower power, we still see that the process are far too long, non-transparent, very challenging, and expensive at some point.
I actually wanted to ask, if I remember correctly from your presentation, you said 24 hours public charging over the whole period. So that was roughly half, a bit less than half public, and a little more than half depot charging, right? Was that similar for Daimler Truck? Did I miss this, or
we charge exclusively on public
exclusively?
Charges. Yes, there was a predefinition of the trip, because we like Emilia pointed out, what happens now is the first customers they go for depot charging. We consult them in a holistic way with what they need for infrastructure, and we do that, and we have lots of orders. It works fine, but this will only lead so far, because at some point the line haul situations where you pick up a load from defined depot and drive it to another defined depot, and you have charging infrastructure, and the drivers can go home at night or sleep there. These are limited, and then we need to continue, and then we come into the public charging, and we wanted to prove that it can be done with our product today, and this is something that's why we exclusively charge there. And it varied, like I said, from an hour when you have a great charging station to hours and hours if you don't. But we relied exclusively on public.
What was the minimum state of charge in the battery that you felt comfortable with leaving the truck or aiming for a charging station?
We basically tried to the plan was with 20%.
20.
At the plan, because we had summer conditions, we had very good tires on the truck, and we knew that we would be able to do that. We ended up with 8% at the lowest when we had
less than half
to try several stations. Yes, but and as I said, we planned conservatively because we knew that we couldn't rely on an infrastructure. We know how our truck behaves when we do our tests, and when we drive to our own charging station at home, we go down to 2%, or we really push the edge, but we didn't dare pushing the edge because you never know if it actually works. And then the fun begins, because if you drive fully loaded 40 tons to the next charging stations, will I make it? Won't I make it? Then you uncouple the trailer. Then you leave the trailer, like you pointed out, you leave the trailer here and you drive there. And that's why we try to avoid that, because as said, there are limits also to working hours. And so at some point you have to have a cutoff.
Emilia, what was your
That I actually don't know. 1.5%. So that was kind of, you actually told that was really scary. It was in Poland, right? So and the kind of getting, it was really, no. But it all sorted out well in the end. But I mean, that's maybe not the dream situation then, to have 1.5.
So then again, the question, how far are we from real world business cases here at 1.5%? That sounds scary, right? If you have a value payload in the trailer, 40 tons or so, then 1.5%.
Yeah, but I mean, if we do have the right charging infrastructure again, if you're able to do the charging when you are unloading and loading, if you're able to charge through when you have your rest times, if you can charge overnight over depot charging, and if you even know where the charging is, then of course it is about also. I think it's. In that sense, we're kind of similar in our industry as in the passenger car. I think it's also about range anxiety and about information. You need to know, and you need to be able to plan, and you need to also have the information. Okay, this charger is out of order. That's also a good indication. And so it's information and awareness.
And then I'm going to ask a very unfair question. What is the Commission going to do about this?
Well, I think, first of all, coming back to what you said, because I think that's the right point. The difference between the passenger car and the trucks is maybe also that the charge point operator has a much more reliable business case to calculate with, because you guys are driving most of your routes in a very repetitive manner. I mean, because these are kind of scheduled routings. So you have a much better way to sort of deal your planning for charge point operations, because you can much better calculate the vehicle demand. So this is why I'm a bit. It's all challenging, but I think the conditions here are a bit better plannable. And then we come to the planning and what the Commission is doing, and absolutely this is a challenge. Leave aside the recharging for the moment. We know how difficult the truck parking situation is in Europe. You have seen all the work we've been pushing into the safe and secure parking site discussions, and we will continue to do that. We have come forward with the classification schemes and all of that to give a bit better orientation to the market. We are rolling out AFIF with the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Facility with the 1 billion at the moment, where we are prioritizing we try to prioritize truck recharging projects. And of course, we hope that we can continue with the AFIF, because it's a very well-functioning instrument in the future. But we also have to see how the MFF discussions roll out and what it means. But I think the number one thing that we will now take very seriously is what the national policy frameworks member states will send to us.
Under AFIR.
Because these, as you know, the member states have to send us by the end of this year the first plan of the national policy framework, how they are intending to meet the targets under AFIR. And then by the end of next year, it's the final thing. In between, we have an iterative process. And we will be very carefully looking into the way and how seriously member states are planning, indeed, how they're going to meet the truck recharging targets under the AFIR. Because we always say this is not only a reporting exercise, this is a planning exercise, and the planning needs to be right.
And we spoke, that's why I asked the question about the public versus depot charging, right? We all know that a lot of the charging, depending on use cases, will happen in depots. But there's and again, I said this many times before, we're not necessarily the biggest fans of regulations, but what's happening in depots?
Well, depots are private infrastructure. And of course, you can have your reflections and tell us what you would find relevant that we do on depot infrastructure. For the moment, of course, this is private infrastructure, and we should not tell a company how it has to organize its sort of depot. We also have to see that this is quite a big of a regulator intervention. But of course, if we see in the future that this is really creating extreme problems for one or the other reasons, we have to reflect what we do there, be that sort of financial incentives, other things, because we know that the depots, in particular, the destination depot, is a challenge for you guys, because you ideally want to go to the depot, unload and recharge while you are unloading and go on, and not in all depots I think we can do that. So I think for us we have to think a bit what we do there. I cannot give you a ready-made answer, but I think for the moment we will just see and wait to see how the market reacts to that challenge and how big the challenge is.
Emilia, any reflections on this depot charging?
Yeah, but I think I must also agree on the public charging first, to say that the business case is probably easier to find with heavy duty vehicles, and because you need to have a certain use cases or uses per day in order to have the business case. And I think business case is important also for the charge point operators, yes, because we want to have a full ecosystem that it's kind of profitable. But when it comes to depot charging, I think we have some good examples in some countries where you can apply for some funding to when you're doing this. I think that the help that would be great to have is also on the actual connection process for the grid again. And sorry now for being like a broken record, but this is something that is. I mean, we see that in Sweden we have like over I think it's 190 or something like that grid companies and the processes are so different depending on which grid company you're connecting with. I mean, it can be that you're sending in your application into a black hole, and you do not even get an answer within a year. If you're not knowing, am I in a queue? Who am I? And that I mean, that's a problem. So I think that's to be able to put some pressure on that one would be great, to have harmonized and transparent grid processes.
The Commission, the colleagues from ENA, and of course the colleagues, there was a revision, the partial revision of the Electricity Market Design Directive. And if you look into Article 31?
71.
31.
31 only.
I think it's Article 31. That is the 3 months, and the requirement now for DSO to acknowledge receipt of a recharging point connection request within 3 months and update on the status thereafter every quarterly. So that needs, of course, to be implemented now. Yeah. I mean, it needs to be transposed in the member states, and we need to push for a correct and quick transposition. But at least it helps with the first step in the process, that you get a certain timely recognition of your recharging request and a follow-up where you are. I mean, it might not help you with still having to wait 2 years for the connection time, but at least you know that it is somewhere there and you know where you are in the queue. So per, and we have to think a little bit what else to do. You've seen the grid action plan that we put out. We're working on this transparency overview where we have to match, I think, and that will be the challenge, to do that in a bit of a coordinated way, that we match a better understanding of the demand and the supply. So the demand from the trucking side, which I think becomes better and better understandable with all the studies out there, including the one that ASEA did, which is a very good study. And then the work on transparency overview from the side of the grid, where you recall that under the grid action plan, we should have a pan-European hosting capacity overview by middle of this year, next year, 2025. So yeah, that needs to be transparency in the system. I think that we need to increase.
We had a discussion actually here in this room last week with the grid people, and we weren't sure. We needed to follow up about this on this the question if this overview is actually going to be on member state level. So I understand my takeaway from this discussion was that it was not on a European level, but it was at best on a member state level, perhaps even on a DSO level, so on a network operator level.
The requirement is for the member state level, because that is sort of the national obligation. And frankly speaking, also, I mean, when you're planning your recharging pools, even the national level might not be good enough for you. You want to have it at the DSO level, and that's where the problem starts, because you recalled how many DSOs you have in Sweden, or how many we have in other member states. So that's a bit but that's an assessment challenge. We have to work on that. But I think everybody's aware on it. So let's see where we end up.
Indeed, yeah. Any questions? Any further comments? Please, Niels Gunnar. We have a mic for you.
Niels Gunnar Woerth from Scania. We talk quite a lot about infrastructure and connect it fully to the electric infrastructure in the grid. It happens to be that an infrastructure also the roads. And it's known that electric and also hydrogen-driven vehicles have much more of a weight of the dry weight. This works negatively on a payload. So what is the actions there to see that we come in a total economy comparison, at least, to the diesel alternatives? Today, you lack something like 3,000 kilo of payload when you're top max loaded, which happens quite often in the business of the hauliers. So they are not competitive, and they are hindered to buy this truck because of that. Any comments on that?
Can I first perhaps, I saw the figure on your presentation, on your 22 ton, right, payload.
That's maximum payload we can do with 42 tons with additional 2 tons. That's the 22 ton payload we can haul with the e-truck.
And what's the difference there to a diesel?
About 3 tons.
3 tons.
Yeah. Even though we have the benefit of the 2 tons that are in there, but there's a topic, and we also have the topic that there's also different regulations of axle loads. They make it very hard, depending on country and regulation, to fulfill all the requirements.
Scania was 38 ton, I think, the total.
We do have the same problem with these 3 tons, so that's a similar type of challenge.
Yeah.
So basically, to compare numbers, that was just a driving weight. We drove with 40 tons and you with 38, but I think.
But I mean, in the end, if you mean if you want to have it fully loaded the truck, then then I think we're having the same challenge. Exactly.
It's regulation.
Yeah. And then the question, what's the Commission going to do about this?
No, I mean, come on, you know the discussion we're having. I mean, we're in the middle of the trialogues on the revision of the Weights and Dimensions Directive.
We're not there yet. I think Council has not yet.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, the Commission has made a proposal to recognize the issue as increasing weight load. We have to see where we end. I think from our point of view, I mean, you saw our proposal. I mean, that's a response to the challenge, and we hope that we don't take too much more time to come to a good conclusion on this one.
Indeed, and just for the record, we think that the Commission's proposal was fairly good and ambitious. But in the end, right, it's real world experience that counts, and that's where the challenge for us is in the end. Further questions, comments? I have a few more then, but please, von Santa.
Thank you, Thomas. Question for Axel. So member states are currently drafting their social climate plans, implementing the Social Climate Fund, and the Social Climate Fund can be used for recharging infrastructure for vulnerable micro enterprises. Do you think that, or to what extent do you think that this can be an opportunity for trucks, for the deployment of truck recharging infrastructure? Any thoughts on this? I know this is now it's at national level, so they are. But do you think that I think that the Commission is developing the guidelines? Do the guidelines include any element on this, or are you aware of this? Thank you.
The point is more to be clear that the support under the national climate plans goes to companies, micro companies, who are at the risk of being affected by transport poverty. So, I mean, to ensure that. And I think then, of course, if you are an SME which is fulfilling that criteria and you're operating a fleet of trucks, then that should be possible to be eligible. But so I'm not in 100% following that one. We can come back to that one. But I have not seen, at least in what I saw from a longer distance, that it is excluded, put it that way.
Very well. Yes. 2 more questions here. One question here. Yes.
Thank you for all the presentation. Do you see a pathway to reach the famous 400,000 truck by the end of the decade, or how do you see this? To both truck OEM.
You want to start?
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you very much. No, but I mean, of course, if we have the enabling conditions there, if we see the clear demand, if the ramp up goes as we want it to do, then of course we would like to see the goal to be reached. But there are so many aspects into this and I think that's about the complexity as well. And I think that it's we were talking about SME, but that's also a complexity, that there are many small family companies who are owning trucks, maybe up to 5 trucks, and then to do that type of investment is another type of challenge. So I think we need to of course do our work with kind of delivering and developing world-class trucks as we do. But what we cannot do this ourselves. We're trying to do a lot because we have this depot charging. We are selling truck as a service. We have the public charging company Milans. So we are doing lots of things, but we cannot do everything alone.
To add to that, I can fully support that, and we also on the truck side we also see the fuel cell truck as a potential amendment for high payload and even higher ranges. And there we have the same issue again. We develop the trucks. We bring them on the road. We have basically 3 different propulsion technologies that we need to develop simultaneously, but we cannot do the infrastructure. That's Milans is a good start, but then this is the major factor for the ramp up. Infrastructure and cost parity. That's the part we cannot do alone.
I know none of you said it's going to be 350,000 only vehicles. Milans was the first segue here, and then Simon.
Hi, yeah, thanks for all the promotion. Koen from Milans. Well, the cost of charging was mentioned, I think, in the presentation of Scania. I didn't see any figures in the one from Daimler, but was that somehow considered in your decision of the planning of the route? Did you look into, pricing? Do you have an idea of the total cost of charging? And then the last question, did you somehow, because I'm somehow familiar also with the passenger car setup and the number of mobility service providers, did you somehow end up looking into that? Who of, let's say, the market parties out there could serve your interest in the best possible way? Because ideally, you should not be in a position to download thousands of apps in order to make a trip from A to B, but rely on the services of the market. Or was it not considered as part of this trip and you just wanted to show that you can drive from A to B? So yeah, any comments on that would be appreciated.
Let's start with the first question. What was the Daimler figures? To be honest, we still have not received all the invoices yet. And
when was the trip?
July.
In June?
Yeah, June, July was the trip. This is also part of the issue. It is a huge load of paperwork. We wanted to do the subtotal, and with the, in our case with the 15,000 kilometers and 39 days, it was even some more invoices and apps. And the second question: Did we plan for the most cost efficient way of charging? No, we were happy to find charging stations in the best way. It was always find a charging station with a safe and secure parking nearby and a way to sleep nice and cozy and hygienic. So it's nice. It's okay to sleep one night in a truck, but then on the next night you want to shower again. So that's why it's always kind of a hotel, a truck parking, and a charging station. And if you try that, you're happy to find any charger and plus 1 or 2 fallback solutions. So it would be really great. That's what our customers need: reliable pricing and a cost-efficient way. But it's not planning of the trip yet. And we would love to avoid this number of apps and credit cards.
Excellent, thanks. If I 1 second, if I noticed on your presentation the experience you at the very top you mentioned silence, the silence in the vehicles. Is it interesting that the first thing that is noteworthy about an electric truck is its silence, right? And that in combination with the sleeping nice and cozy, is that you've sold the electric trucks. Is that a feedback you're getting in real world?
Absolutely, and I think that we also hear from our customers or the drivers that have started to drive electric trucks. They do not want to go back to combustion engine again. They really enjoy it. It's silent, but it's also less vibrations. So I mean, the working environment is also an important aspect here. And with the driver shortage in Europe, that is of course also interesting to have the work environment being better. And of course, with regards to the charging as well. I mean, to have a nice charging place where you can stand overnight and have that shower or whatever. So I think it's also about to find this whole ecosystem again. Is also about the comfort of the drivers, which is key.
Would you go back? Would you go back to?
To being a truck driver.
No, to the diesel. I mean, it's I go back and forth sometimes because we do comparisons. But once you drove an electric truck, you don't want to go back. That's also the feedback we get from the customers who transformed already. There's some drivers might be skeptical at the beginning, but then once they've driven an electric, they don't want to go back. And the quietness also, you have built-in air conditioning when you stand, heating when you stand, and there's no way you can empty that huge battery with whatever you do in the truck. So this is the comfort that you mentioned is the same. You can have the radio, your fridge, your heating on, and you will barely see a drop of a percent of SOC in that huge battery. So that's also some comfort that I think the drivers will definitely appreciate when they drive these trucks.
Excellent. Simon, you had a question.
Simon Godwin from Finia. You probably know us better from our previous incarnation as Delphi Technologies. So we make fuel systems for internal combustion engines. You might imagine that we have a vested interest in the status quo. Obviously we do, but we're also very interested to understand what the future holds, and so that we can understand how to invest for the future. So you're talking about 400,000 zero-emission trucks by 2030. Maybe double that amount you're going to need by 2035, and then going to nearly 100% in 2040. So, it's already pretty challenging in just 5 years' time, much more so in 10 and 15 years' time. And the mantra is, if we have the charging in place, if TCO is positive, which of course it can be, if you've got all the other advantages like comfort, etc., that you can go down that path. But do you think that electric trucks are going to give all, or let's say 90% of truck drivers, truck companies, everything that they have now with a conventional truck, such that they feel comfortable to go down that route? Because they're very pragmatic on cost, but they also want to get the utility and the what they're expecting in order to do their job properly. Do you think that's a viable path with those very tough targets over the next 15 years?
Excellent question. And before I'm going to ask what's the Commission going to do about this. Sorry.
Well, I think we do see that electrification is a very promising road onwards, but we do look into fuel cells and also hydrogen in the combustion engine. But we see, the batteries are getting better. There are new technologies. We will not know exactly, but what will happen in the future, of course. 15 years time might. It's fairly near, but we also we cannot develop too many solutions at the same time either. So I think it's a matter of focusing a bit as well. But of course, we're looking into many different solutions because we will see what will happen and then how quickly the battery development will be.
And that basically, I don't think that if the applications do not change at all, I don't think we can do everything electric. There will be a mixture. Either the custom application has to change a little bit to adapt to the product, because there's some limits as regarding payload. Think about heavy construction vehicles and these kind of things. There will be different solutions for different applications there as well. That's why we have the fuel cell that is on discussion, and there will be a variety of solutions, but they will all have infrastructure demand, not only product demand.
In terms of compliance with CO2 standard, the best is to go for long-haul truck mainly. But in terms of practicalities, for the first user, it might be easier to go for regional trucks, which can use more extensively their depot. Or do you see the first thousands of vehicles that you are going to have on the regional side or rather on the long haul as really as a starter?
I think that's why we need to see the public charging, and that we want to see the megawatt charging to be able to be able to charge within the 45 minutes of break and driving resting times. So we do see that long haulage is of course necessary for reaching the targets. But right now, I mean, the regional applications are super interesting. We see in cities such as Copenhagen, where you have the waste collection, then it's electric trucks because you have other types of benefits there. It's a public tendering process. You have the silence then again, but also the local emissions. So I think we will see a range, but for sure we will need the long haulage.
And the regional delivery trucks, they have been available in the market for quite a while already by almost all manufacturers. We have the EX 300, 400 in the market for a while. Scania, Volvo, they are there already. But the business case, the cost parity part, with the high amount of mileage these trucks, the long-haul trucks make, it's not only a big CO2 benefit if we transform those, it's also, if the cost is right, it's also for the customer a big benefit, because the more he drives, the more he saves.
But would you anticipate that these trucks would be used differently than their diesel counterparts? In terms of, I mean, I would think that the expectation from customers and the way you're probably trying to sell this is going to replace your diesel truck, or perhaps more than one. But do you think with the different features, characteristics, is the use of those trucks going to change? Are they going to drive longer? Is the lifetime going to be longer? Is the first buyer's use time going to be different?
I think we see it's difficult to say exactly what will happen, but we have seen some customers who have started to use the truck more hours of the day.
All right. More intensively.
Exactly, more intensively in order to get the mileage, as you say. So for sure there will be some of those cases, but I think it's really tricky, and maybe we need to change in a way the way we think if we are supposed to manage. But I think it's super difficult to say exactly how that would look.
So I think Jochen.
Yeah, same assessment. We see it as well, and also the investment is higher, so you want to use it more intensively. Obviously, we see that. And also some at the early stages there still were subsidy projects, and they were also bound to the mileage. So you needed to have a certain mileage in order to get the subsidies. That was also a driver there. But now they have to be self-sufficient on the cost parity side, and that's why it's so important. Like Emilia pointed out already.
So I think it's all in all, it's very encouraging, right, to see that. I think you put this, Axel, in the words that the ingredients, everything is basically ready, right? We don't have a full network, and we have all the pieces of the puzzle identified, and it's now about fitting them together, right? And this is obviously not only the Commission's job; it's many stakeholders involved in this.
On the transport side, I think we have the pieces together. So we have the vehicles. We also know how the station setup looks like, etc. We have experiences with the first-hand experiences, and I mean, soon we will be discussing MCS, and we will be transferring it into European law and all of that. Of course, the big part of the puzzle is the electricity grid, where we see that the marriage between the two sectors is not that easy, and that the grids are not. I mean, it's not only transport specific. We have similar transition challenges for the heating, for the cooling, for the data centers. I mean, a lot of things for which the grids have to be modernized and extended. And here we have to see the next years will be really critical. I think this will be one of the first and main priorities, I think, in the overall discussion about the transition to climate neutrality. Also, member states need to recognize that they have to invest into functioning and digitalized electricity grids. I mean, that's really the backbone of the transition. And I think here, I think the problem has been recognized, but of course, this is slowly changing infrastructure, and we really need to push for it. Otherwise, yes, I think this is a super dynamic market environment. I mean, look where we've been 3 years ago, where we are now. I mean, it's not comparable. And I think for us, it's really important. And this is why we, for example, also have established our new sort of expert subgroup on trucks that we discuss with the forwarding companies, with the manufacturers, with the infrastructure operators, and with the grid operators together, because you need to tackle this together. I think that's also which makes it maybe a bit more complicated and challenging, but not insurmountable when you compare it to like operating a diesel truck where you have less players around the table. But I think the ambition is there, and as I said, I think it's a already now in many aspects positive business case, and people start to see that. And then of course, if you see it, then you also want to realize it.
It's with probably like with many other issues or problems as well, right? The deeper you dig into this, the closer you come to realization, the bigger the problems, the more different problems you begin to see. But then it's also encouraging to see that different people are beginning to work on this actually, right? I would take it, but please correct me, you're positive about
yeah. I mean,
also about the
no, look,
the infrastructure development.
Honestly speaking, I mean, as I said in the beginning, I mean, I think the development of the vehicle side is really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we're basically 2024, and you have a use case for every market segment. Tested use case, the costs are good, the performance is good, etc. On the infrastructure side, I mean, people have been going into infrastructure investments, which are huge, without even having a fleet of vehicles. So that also shows you that there is a willingness. And of course, it will be a challenge to roll out to full 10T completion and all of that. But I think, well, we can also put the head into the sand. No, we shouldn't do that. No, we will get there. We have some issues with regard to the grids, but also there's a lot of dynamics. So yeah, let's stay positive. I think we should, we have to, we can do this. Excellent.
To wrap this up, perhaps this is the moment, Axel, any wish for the industry that you would ask the industry? This is what I will ask you to do in the next 12 months.
In terms of the automotive, no, I mean, you need to scale up. You need to work with the electricity sector to find a way to bring megawatt charging into the DNA. I think that is really the key. I hope we get to the standard next year, but I'm pretty confident. And I think the main thing, we're at a pivotal moment, and I think what we need is a positive message to the customer. That that you're not starting with the problems, but with the opportunities, because people like to invest into opportunities and not into problems.
That's very well said. Thank you. To turn it the other way around, any wish, any expectation that you would have for the next, say, 12 months towards policymakers, not necessarily the Commission, but policymakers at large? And also, where do you think industry will have to do more in the next few years, perhaps?
I think you pointed out already quite well the MCS standard, something between, said something that this is something that we do scale up. That's our goal. We will start delivering the eActros 600 at the end of this year, and then we ramp up with a good order book. And then this will also, with the scale also comes cost. But what we wish is basically we talked about a lot. It's the infrastructure for a customer to make it a commercial truck business model to also drive long haul. I think this will be the next level that we can scale up from depot for customers up to real long haul. Because living in Germany, I always have the picture in my head that when you drive on the Autobahn, you often see on the truck parking spaces, they park up to the Autobahn because they don't even find a parking spot for the overnight. They stand on the sideline, safety hazard, everything. And I really wish that we find a way for them not only to park secure with the diesel, which we didn't manage today yet, but to charge and park secure with electric truck. And that's the big point. If I look at the chaos that I see there every night when I drive home over the Autobahn, then I think that's a huge challenge I see. And that's something that needs to change for the truck drivers and also for the trucking companies.
Thank you so much, Emilia.
No, but I guess it's about I agree with what you say, of course, and I think also that we should be optimistic. I mean, and that's something that we could contribute with as well. I mean, showing the good examples. Of course, we should do that and communicate what is possible. That's for sure something that we should do. But I mean, our asks is also on the business case for our customers. There we will need some help. because we need to ensure that the running costs are better for electric trucks, since it is so far more expensive than the comparable diesel engine. So I think there we will need some help. It's about price differences between diesel and electricity. It's about the road taxes. I mean, there are many different ways of doing that, but that is something that we will need help with, I would say.
Excellent. What shall I say? It's been a super interesting session, I think. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you so much for coming here, and thank you so much, you guys, to come up here and talk with us. And Axel, thank you so much for coming and having this exchange with us. We will now have the opportunity to continue the discussions in a more informal setting over drinks and some snacks, I believe. Thank you.